Welcome back to another North Carolina Tar Heels football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, that is called Tar Heel Illustrated. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at Heel Illustrated, no S in the middle, at Heel Illustrated. And we're really starting to ramp up our Facebook stuff. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, which is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of football recruiting and jack of all trades, Miss Dina King. And Dina, we're back to do another commitment pod, the sixth member of North Carolina's class of 2024. He's Daniel Anderson, 6'2", 245 pounds, strong side defensive end from Memphis, Tennessee. We've talked a lot about them going into Memphis, like just into Memphis and just to Nashville. But now they're a stone's throw from Arkansas, getting Daniel Anderson from Memphis. So what are your initial thoughts about Daniel Anderson popping for the Tar Heels?
Well, first of all, it's usually you are doing something when some news breaks, but today I was really busy doing something, and when the news hit, I had to call you and tell you that information and everything.
You know what I was doing? I was watching the Orioles season opener.
Well,
and I had to come in here and write that. And by the way, we usually know when kids are going to commit. This one caught us by surprise today. We acknowledge that.
This one was fast. This was fast because he came up to visit this past weekend, was there for the open practice there in Keenan on that Saturday. I think Jacob got his picture in the poncho type that was very useful that day. Everybody was grabbing ponchos and stuff, but he it didn't take long. He got offered that weekend, had time to think about it, and decided to pop for the Tar Heels. Didn't take long for him to decide that's where he wanted to go, and I've spoken to him since he committed, and he just likes the atmosphere at UNC. He got to see a practice. He got to hang around the coaches and the players. I asked him about the coaches. I was like, what was your thoughts about the coaching staff? The first person he mentioned was Coach Chizik, and he said Coach Chizik made him feel like he was part of the family, shook his hand, just, making him feel at home. And then, I asked him about Coach Cross, and, for the past few years that we've dealt with Coach Cross, he's the energy guy. He's the energy guy on the staff, let's get this work, all that, he's Daniel commented on his energy and just charisma and stuff like that. And then he mentioned Coach Brown, and he talked about, Coach Brown basically was the closer. He made him feel like this was the place for him. And he said, he's a Hall of Famer and got so much notoriety, but he's down to earth, and he's just seems like a big family guy. So that was some of the reasons that he decided to pick Carolina.
We're going to talk about his offer sheet. We're also going to talk about him as a player, because I before we did this, I was spending some time watching him on Huddle and some of the other stuff that you can find clips of him. But as far as the offer sheet, that's something that people are going to fixate, and we've done this a lot here lately. Where are the stars? And look at the offer sheet. And that's the way a lot of people are going to look at it. And you and I have been trying to say, look, guys, you got to pull back a little bit and try to see a little bit of a different picture here. He chose Carolina. He has offers from, I believe he tweeted out an offer from Maryland, but it's not checked. He's got Indiana, Coastal Carolina, UNLV. So he got Western Michigan. He's got some Ivy League schools. He's got Dartmouth in there. He's got Penn. He's like a 4.3 GPA or something like that. He's a really smart kid. And so maybe I don't know what other schools are thinking, but I do know a lot more about the way the Carolina staff thinks with respect to recruiting and how they've changed their approach some here in the last year, really. They're going after kids that they deem A, coachable, B, less likely to transfer because they don't want to invest and have to constantly reshape roster. Roster management's a bear. And they can handle losing 8 to 10 or 11 or whatever it was they lost last December, especially when they're able to go out and replace them and actually get better, which is what they did. They want to bring kids in who are program kids that are coachable, that are there for the education, that have a bigger picture view on life, and maybe don't have a handout as much as some others, which has become a thing in college sports, as everybody knows. We're not going to shy away from that. And they want kids that can be molded. And I think it's interesting because you go back and look at TCU, for an example, and I know that some schools looked hard at TCU this past year. How many 4 and 5 stars did they have on their roster? Okay, they got blitzed by Georgia in the title game. Georgia was killing everybody, right? But they got there. So you don't have to load up with a bunch of prima donnas who, if they don't get on the field right away, they're going to hit the portal and get the heck out of town. And that's not what they want. They're continuing to build the culture that they want. And the thing I applaud Mac Brown for, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, Dina, he's willing to change. He's willing to shift gears and say, you know what? That's not the way I want to do it. I think I want to do it this way. And Daniel Anderson perfectly fits because there are a lot of things about him as a player and out the field that remind me of Kamen Rucker.
Yeah. You mentioned it. It's just like in talking with Mac, he realized that recruiting is changing every day,
Yeah.
and they got to adapt. They probably think, if these big timers, these 5 stars, these top kids, a lot of them are, NIL's big deal, and there's some schools that will, that they'll fork it out and everything. And North Carolina is a school that they're not going to do the big dollars. Now, a kid like Drake May, he's going to get it, but every one of these,
but they're going to get it through the collective. To be very clear, they're going to get it through the collective and NIL deals. A lot of schools are straight up paying. Okay, and this may be a fuller podcast for a different time. We know for a fact they've lost guys because they were guaranteed X number of dollars by other schools. Well, they lost a guy last year before he even was on campus at the other school. So what we're saying here about Daniel Anderson and just the recruiting approach, to me, he's emblematic, an example of the recruiting approach that's changed a little bit. And we're not saying that he's not worth anything. It's just not everybody has their hand out. And actually, one of the things that we've learned here recently is fewer kids have their hands out now than before because they're getting burned a lot. But they don't want to have to deal with that mindset. It's chaos. Texas A&M paid 24 kids last year. 9 of them are still there. They don't want to deal with that. So people, because the reason we're talking about this in this podcast now, so everyone will understand, is as soon as it runs, and if we don't talk about it, people are going to ask why. Why they get a kid that has no stars yet? Why they get a kid who's got this offer sheet? And I'm telling you, watch the film. Learn about this kid. He's Kamen Rucker. There are a lot of dudes like that out there, a lot more than people realize. That's what they're trying to build this program around. You can go get some stars, but if you just shoot for nothing but stars, then you're going to have to really replenish a lot when those guys don't see the field right away and they take off. So I think that they're looking for foundational pieces, and some of these guys can be diamonds in the rough and become stars, because who are the 2 best defensive players on the football team right now? Cedric Gray and Kamen Rucker. They were 3 they were 3 stars in college. And Rucker, I will never forget when Rucker committed, people were like, who is this guy? Because he was in that weekend as well. He was in for a camp. He got an offer on a Saturday. He committed on a Monday. I talked to him on the phone for 45 minutes that night, and I thought, I told you. I said, I know why they got this kid. It's like the smartest, nicest dude I've ever talked to. And
I remember that.
Yeah, so don't fixate on it. Just like the basketball fans, don't worry about where these portal kids are coming from, where they play, because these kids are everywhere. Good players are everywhere, and coachable A coachable 3-star is better than an uncoachable 4-star every day of the week.
And how many times have we told fans, fans are fixated on stars and rankings. Stars and rankings really don't care. They don't matter to the coaches.
No.
They do their own evaluations, and stars and rankings is just somebody's opinion. And so getting back to possibly why Daniel hadn't got any. I mean, I don't know. He might not have even started on, the camps and combines are getting ready to start, and when you get it on into the summer, you have the colleges doing their prospect camps and stuff. So we don't know everybody's situation. He might not have went to some of these camps. So, it's impossible to know everybody. I mean, just to be to this group, that 6 kids, I believe there were 2 that had profiles when North Carolina started recruiting them, and that's the Galls, Davion Galls, and Andrew Rosinski. I made the profiles and rivals for Khalil Conley, Evan Bennett, and Desmond Jackson. So, but Daniel Anderson's was on there, and I added a picture for him. So just don't, he will get a ranking, it's just kind of, it takes time, and he may be going to a Rivals camp here soon. Who knows?
Yeah, and the other part about that too is Rivals. There were no camps 2 years ago, and then last year they just had minimal number of camps. They was a very scaled back camp circuit for everybody. So a lot of these kids haven't been seen.
Well, this year,
and they like. I know one thing with Rivals, they like to see the kids in person, or sometimes if a dude's just off the charts with offers from Alabama and Georgia, it's kind of obvious he's got to at least be a 3-star if he's getting all those schools. But they like to see guys. So when you finish your interview with Daniel, ask him, did you go to any camps? It'd be very interesting. In fact, it'd be very interesting to see what a lot of these kids say. And I will say this, and we're not covering for the staff or anything like this. I just think that we have a much better understanding of their approach now. And we have to do a better job as journalists to explain that to the Carolina fans that watch and listen to us and read us, that there has been a shift. And I know you've had a couple pieces that we've done, but maybe we got to do a better job of it. But I will say this, a kid comes in the weekend, they offer him in person, and he commits a few days later. That means that the offer was 100% committable at the time, and they were recruiting the kid to commit when he was in Chapel Hill. And they took the commitment right away, and they're excited about it. That should be enough. When you think about the brain trust in that building now, with Clyde Christensen added and Ted Monachino added, they know Freddie Kitchens. These guys know football. They know football players. They know prospects. And if it's good enough for them, it ought to be good enough for everybody else. I know I'm not going to second guess it as a journalist covering them, and I know you haven't. And we actually think it's kind of neat because the blow-up class that they just had a couple of years ago, that hasn't worked out yet. Hadn't worked out at all. So maybe this works out for them. Maybe this is how North Carolina, maybe this is part of its niche, because they're still going to get 4-star kids. They're still going to have a chance at a 5 here and there. It's not like it's going to be all, 3 stars or not unranked kids. So I think it's kind of interesting. It's made it a little bit more challenging for us in some ways, because some of these kids have committed pretty quickly after offers before we get a chance to really get to know them and be prepared to kind of roll one of these pods out as soon as they commit. So it's good. It's going to raise the bar a little bit for us, but that's okay. We have no aversion to grinding a little bit harder.
Well, Daniel told me he's being recruited for the jack position, and the staff loves his pass rushing, and they want him to keep focusing on getting better at his pass rushing and everything. So, he looks like a perfect size for that jack position. And, he's the first defensive line jack type kid that they've landed. I mean, they've got Evan Bennett, who's a linebacker, and Khalil Conley, an athlete who's most likely going to play star or safety or something. So it's good to see them land a guy on the up towards the trenches and everything. So
and let me add, when you're recruiting, when you're looking for a jack in recruiting, it's not a real deep pond, because you have to have the athlete who fits the certain specs and has the ability, someone that you can say, okay, he can rush the passer, but also cover. Because when I was talking to Mari Gaynor a couple months ago, he said one of the things that he needs to learn how to do is combine rushing the passer with coverage, so you're not giving it away by certain guys being in certain packages. If you have your jack who rushes and you have your jack who covers and they're rotating, then you give it away to the offense. You want to be able to do everything. And there's also an IQ component too to that position that you have to be high. That's why Noah Taylor, who was there last year, real smart guy. Chris Collins was a real smart guy. Kamen Rucker, real smart guy. Mari Gaynor, real smart guy. And Daniel Anderson, real smart guy that combined all of the necessities to have that, to excel in that role.
Yeah, but he said he loves the pass rush, and I can see a lot of those guys they love to do that. They want to hit. Most of the time they want to land the big hit on the quarterback and everything. So, you mentioned earlier, he is a Tennessee guy, and we've been saying the footprints going westward. So now it's over. It's creeping out into the volunteer state. So it's getting close to Mississippi River.
Now it's Beale Street, right down the road from Mississippi River. Yeah. So now they're recruiting Beale Street, which is a pretty interesting place.
And of course, Coach Brown is a Tennessee guy, so Cookeville's one of Cookeville's best ever. So he's going to his home state to try to land some kids.
Daniel Anderson, 6'2", 245 pounds, a strong side defensive end, recruited as a jack from Germantown High School in Memphis. He is the most recent member of the class of 2024 to commit to Gene Chizik, Mac Brown, and North Carolina. She's Dina King. I'm Andrew Jones. We appreciate you stopping by.